Well, welcome back to the system as we close out our second week in October. And we'll pop on over to the studio here, take a look at what we've got this week. And we start off with a little bit of Stormwatch, and then we get an opportunity to have a look at how our output from the solar panels alters this time of year, as we got a couple of really good days to use as benchmarks. Nice, cool, sunny days. So let's head back over to the studio and have a look at our second week in October. Welcome back to the studio, and let's start off by discussing Stormwatch for a moment. We got our first taste of this feature on the 8th, and you can keep watching the video for the numbers for the 8th if you're interested in that. But what I want to discuss just a little bit before we kick off our week, Stormwatch is a great feature. Don't get me wrong. It seems well thought out, it's well intended. The issue that we have with Stormwatch, and the issue that others that I've spoken with about the same thing, the issue that we have is one of control. So it's while it's great that one can opt in to automatically have Stormwatch charge your system, especially in the case I can see where if somebody lives where there are tornadoes, man, I mean, it's really advantageous to have the system automatically kick in. You have a tornado warning in your area all of a sudden, even if you can only get maybe 5 kilowatts or so within an hour or so before something happens and power goes down. That's a great thing to have. And so don't get me wrong in any of this. I want to make sure that everybody understands that I have the deepest respect for Tesla doing that. But it's outrageous that the homeowner lacks the control over that key feature. So Tesla has put themselves in the position as arbiter of what is and what is not an emergency. And so I don't know whether that leaves them kind of on the hook in any legal sense for anything going wrong horribly. But they will not allow you to put power to their batteries on a normal situation like you can in Europe and Australia if you decide that you want to then put additional power into the system. So not only is this annoying, but it's actually placing Tesla in a bit of a bait and switch situation as to how the batteries were presented to the public initially. At least as far as we were concerned, that was one of the key reasons why we were looking into this to begin with. Was we thought, oh, this would be a great idea not only to do load shifting, but then to also experiment with how long can you extend the ability of the system to go out through winter, and how much can you reduce your power bill over doing it the way it is, basically with just trying to charge off of the grid. Is there any benefit to doing this off of the batteries and remaining off grid as much as possible? So that load shifting ability being gone in the US and Canada also leads to a situation where when you're trying to use the time of use setting in the advanced menu, there seems to be some strangeness going on there because the system isn't really able to respond in a way that it was originally designed to do. So that's also an issue. We'll go ahead and do a separate video on that time of use setting in the advanced menu. Won't beat that to death anymore right now though. So back to Stormwatch. My initial fear with Stormwatch was that the Energy Sovereignty Project home, because it had 6 batteries, would actually wind up trying to draw 30 kilowatts from the grid power. And if you happen to be charging your car or something while it did that, it could potentially then obviously trip the main breaker to the home. So I was really pleased to learn that the system limits the inflow to 20 kilowatts in the system-wide, even though our system would be capable of doing 30. And so that was good to see. And so here's a graphic of the 8th showing our charged. And so I did also plug the car in to simulate kind of that worst case scenario. I wanted to see whether or not our home's breaker would be able to handle it. And it did just fine. But you can see that initial spike there over 30 kilowatts. That's that brief test charge with the car. And so that worked out fine. And so with all that, let's go ahead and start the week by looking at the numbers for the 8th. And so here it is. It's a partly cloudy day with moderate winds forecast for the evening and also for the following several days. And so PG&E had announced that it might be doing rolling blackouts for as long as a week, and that in some limited areas that the power could potentially be out for that entire time. And so this is what initiated that Stormwatch feature. And so I had shut off Stormwatch on our system out of, again, that concern that it might trip our main breaker, and I didn't want that to happen while I was away. So I had turned Stormwatch off. But once I got word that Stormwatch had been initiated, I went home and turned it on. And so as you can see here, we started off first contribution to about 12% in the system. And then I'll put the graph up again side by side here so you can take a look at that while we continue to talk. And again, you can see that the 29 kilowatt hours of vehicle charge, that occurred primarily in the evening, though I did do a brief charge to the car to do that stress test of the system, but that was only 5 minutes, 10 minutes, something like that. So I again thought initially that I'd charge the system to 100% using the Stormwatch, but I realized that this would be stupid since we'd initiated the Stormwatch early in the morning, and so I opted to go ahead and take my best guess as to how much a cloudy day would produce and opted to charge the system to 75% with the idea that solar would finish off that last bit of the charge to bring us to 100%. And I came pretty close. I missed by 6.2 kilowatt hours, as you can see, and that was the amount that was sent to the grid. And so we had decent production for a cloudy day, more than I had anticipated, obviously. So we came in there at about 37 kilowatt hours. And because solar was producing at the same time as the system was being charged from the grid, we only actually took 50 kilowatt hours from the grid, and that put that 88% charge, 71.2 kilowatt hours to the battery. And that's obviously given a starting percentage of 12% to bring us to that 100. And here is the notes. And as you can see, I had to do a bit of calculation to come up with a fair approximation of what the actual home usage was for the day. On a regular basis, we subtract what we put to the car from our home use so folks can see these numbers separated out, because it's important to see both. And then the Stormwatch obviously made this a little more difficult because the solar was contributing at the same time. And so I'll give you a little bit longer with that just to see how I arrived at my home usage number. Feel free to pause it if you need a little extra time to take a look and see how I teased those numbers out. And the 9th, sunny day, not much driving. Started the day at 62%. And normally this would have been kind of in the mid-80s after usage as far as remaining, but you saw from the grid there we charged the car the previous day, and so previous evening rather, and so we wound up with 62% as we started the day. Good production for the day, 40.1 kilowatt hours, and again kind of a benchmark for this time of year. That's just what we've been seeing. 15.5 kilowatt hours of home usage, again typical for this time of year. No AC being used, and the AC's actually even been shut off for a little over a week at this point. And the notes, just some vehicle data, pretty typical day. Stormwatch had been turned off, so we weren't any longer having the system maintained at 100%. And such would be the case if we had left Stormwatch on, and so then we'd be actually powering the home off of grid power for the day, while Stormwatch kept the system topped off for when that emergency would take place. And on the 10th, partially cloudy day, not too bad of production, 38.8 kilowatt hours for the day. We're easily able to bring the system up to 100% charge. We sent that 13.7 kilowatt hours of our overage back to the grid rather than charging the car today. And home use still under that 20 kilowatt hour mark. Again, that's typical for this time of year. And the notes, again, no notes, just the vehicle usage. Not really much to tell. It was kind of a typical day. I'll give you just a second with that. And October the 11th, sunny but a hazy day, and that reflected slightly reduced power, reduced contribution, 36.6 kilowatt hour, still right in the ballpark of what's expected. It's funny that the haze actually reduced the overall output a little bit more than the cloud cover did on the previous day. But 20 kilowatt hours to the car, 16.3 for the home usage. The amount of power to the car was by design to kind of match the solar contribution as much as possible during the day, and put basically the overage to the car. And this is one of those rare occasions when I pretty much nailed it. But this is obviously, this is where it's a good, it's good to have a slightly larger system, since you can miss this number by a fair margin. And as you can see from the previous months, you can make up for it by putting more or less of a charge to the car on the following day. And the notes, again, just the vehicle data for the day. Give you a second with that. And the 12th, decent solar contribution, trying to replenish the miles used for that. We did a round trip to the Bay Area. Decent driving for the day, 32 kilowatt hours to the car, 48 kilowatt hours total used between the home and the car charge. So we depleted our reserve just a little bit, but the forecast for the week didn't show any rainy days, a couple cloudy days, but nothing to make us think that we couldn't still count on our 15 to 20 kilowatt hours of surplus for the day. And the notes, just that, replenishing the vehicle driving. The 13th, partly cloudy day, decent production still, 35.6 kilowatt hours. After the car was charged, the system got back up to 48% by the end of total solar day, as it recouped for what was used. Home use was again basically right where it is this time of year, right around that slightly under 20 kilowatt hour mark, and in this case 17.1. And the notes, nothing exciting, just typical day. Vehicle stats for the day. Let's just sit with that for a second. And the 14th, another sunny day, getting that kind of benchmark in there to settle into that 36 to 38 kilowatt hour range. Basically what we've got for this time of year. Total home usage slightly higher than usual, do some cooking and some laundry. Came in at 16.2 kilowatt hours, 10 kilowatt hours going to the car, ending the day at a 57% system charge. And the notes, just that, cool autumn day, shorter days. The sun's not as high in the sky and days are shorter, so we've been seeing that increased fall off from our north-facing panels. And then finally the 15th, just like the day before, again looking at that kind of benchmark day for late October, 36.4 kilowatt hours of production. Cool sunny day, no AC use, no heat. ending the day at 76% system charge, still showing that roughly 15 to 20 kilowatt hour of surplus per day. In this case, we didn't put anything to the car, but we banked it to the system. And the notes, and just that, benchmark, sunny and cool, neutral temperatures. Still had decent range in the car, so we didn't need to put anything there. And that wraps us up for the week. So hope you found the Stormwatch stuff interesting. I'm hoping to do more of this later in the year. I'm hoping that Stormwatch actually comes into play again in that kind of November to December range, so that it'll give us an opportunity to, again, try and test how the system would work if we were able to charge off of the grid in a normal situation, just to kind of allow the grid to supplement what our solar was, and see if that gives us any different numbers, if there's any advantage to doing that as opposed to just simply drawing off the grid constantly. In winter here, our winters are all off grid, and so the amount that we would pay for power isn't going to change depending on what time of day we draw, but that's obviously not the case in all areas. And so, you know, if you're in a desert area, say, I don't know whether or not they have different peak hours for winter or any particular months, so those are things to kind of factor in there. But we'll see how that plays out. So until next time, good luck with your own systems. If this is the first video that you happen to stumble on, look at some of the earlier videos, catch up, see what it's taken to get us to where we are now. And if it's the kind of thing that you enjoy, feel free to like and subscribe so that you won't miss any of these other updates. And I'm looking forward to, obviously, as we close out our last couple of months, we'll wind up doing a whole series of yearly updates as we go over what we've learned for the year. And so that's certainly something that you're not going to want to miss. And so until next time, we'll see you all soon.